Welcome back, guys. So as promised, here's my video of me doing the McWill LCD mod for the Game Boy Color. So in the previous video where I highlighted this mod, we took apart this Game Boy Color, did a little prep, and today we're going to be doing the install. So I'm not a professional, guys. I don't even want to look at this video so much as a tutorial as just a record of me doing this. You know, I'm sure there's certain things that I could do better, but hey, I got results, it worked, and here we go. But first up, that little oscillator, that's the big thing if you're doing this install to pay attention to. I already soldered the pins that go to that C28 cap on the system. You know, so I soldered those wires to the oscillator, and that's probably the hardest part, is doing that. But in this video, I'm just gonna showcase everything that I do. Like I said, not so much a tutorial, more so just, hey, this is me doing this, right? So tinning the wires a little bit. I'm just gonna go ahead and let this play through, comment here and there when I feel there's something worth bringing up, right? So putting a little dab of solder on that C28, that's kind of important to get the wire on there, and it's a very tight space, man. This is, like I said, the most challenging part of the whole thing, but if I can do it, a noob, then I'm pretty sure you can do it as well. I am running this iron at like 30 watts, I want to say. Yeah, it's at 30 watts, and it seems to be everything is fine. Haven't damaged or burned anything yet, except for myself maybe a couple times. I don't know. Just be careful out there, guys. Make sure you know what you're doing, 'cause I sure as shit don't, but I try. I'm learning, boy. I'm learning. But here we go. Like I said, this is the hardest part, is getting this on there. Getting it on there well, but just be patient, take your time, be careful. But there you go. Just don't bridge anything, you know, between the caps. So far, the few systems that I've done, I haven't had an issue. Trying to figure out like better rerouting of the wires is probably something I need to do. I did actually after I finished this install, I actually changed some things up on it. I rerouted the wires and redid the Kapton tape. But like I said in the previous video, these are things that you kind of have to figure out on your own, and you know, I'm still figuring it out. But I did actually redo a couple things on this particular system with the routing of the wires. I think the one, and you'll see very shortly here, the one wire that goes from the oscillator to the actual screen, pin 3, that one I was routing to like the side where the power switch is, but I actually changed it to just going up and over the top of the board, and it actually fits nicer, looks a little better, no issues. So that's one thing I did change. And here we're doing that pin 2 ground that we have to get onto the oscillator. And like I said, look at that diagram, and what I did is you have a top view of the oscillator on the paperwork. I did a bottom view, like if you flip it with the top view of that oscillator on the documentation, when you flip it over to solder the points, you have to keep in mind, don't flip it over, you know, vertically. Flip it over from left to right, horizontally. That way the pins stay, you know, where they kind of make sense, and then you can draw like a little top view to reference to make it a little easier to remember what the pin numbers are. I know there's only 4 pins on there. If one is on the left and then you flip it horizontally from left to right, then one is going to be on the right instead of the left. You just have to keep that in mind so you don't accidentally solder the wrong pin to, you know, the wrong spot on the board or to the screen. That is something that I think on the first one that I did, I kind of messed up on, and I swapped a couple by accident, and then the screen, you know, would turn on, but you wouldn't get an image, and I had to go back and fix that. So that was the biggest challenge for me, was not losing my focus on what the pin numbers actually were. But there you go. So far, so good. Now we got to get that bad boy on the ground. And earlier you did see I kind of scored the plate just lightly, just very light scratches on it to make sure the solder would stick to it. Otherwise it would just slide around and it wouldn't make a good connection. And if that ground comes off, your screen will turn off. It'll light up, but it'll be blank. So here what I'm doing is I'm lining this up to see where I need to cut the plastic on the left of the Game Boy Color shell. That's the one thing is you will have to cut a little piece of plastic, and it's not that difficult to do actually. If you just score it fairly well, you can just kind of pry it off. But right under the top left screw hole, and then kind of down toward the bottom of the left side, you'll see kind of where I do it. That leaves it open perfectly for the screen to fit, because if you don't, the screen's not going to fit. You have to cut this little piece of plastic out. And that's unfortunate. Some people don't want to do modifications to the shells to make these things fit, especially using, you know, the original shell. I kind of feel bad doing so, but you know what? The result you get using this screen is just flipping amazing. So screw it. I use little angle cutters and just snip the 2 points where the length of the plastic, and then I just kind of pry it off. After scoring it a couple times, it does come off fairly easily. You just might need to trim a little of the excess off to keep it flush, but bam. Just be careful, because if you start wedging something in between the side, you could wind up bending other pieces of plastic that you don't want to bend. And this plastic in these cases is very pliable. It does move quite a bit. So definitely be careful with that. Because from my experience, you know, some of these Chinese shells to buy as replacements are not that great. I think I have a clear Game Boy Color that I was actually looking to mod and keep for myself. The one that I showed in the other video that had the front light done, I swear that case has to be like a Chinese case, because upon like further inspection, it just certain things on it are not the same as far as the quality goes. And I'm just like, man, I really want to have the original shells. So definitely be careful, because some things just, it seems like they're not perfect fits. Like the buttons when you're using the other shell that I have, that clear shell, using the buttons that were included in it, they just don't feel right compared to the other Game Boy Colors that I have. So there we go, kind of scored out, cleaned up that cut a little bit. And now I'm prepping to put my glass lens screen cover instead of the plastic one here. So there we go. I do kind of clean off some of this residue. That's one thing I do recommend. Get the sticky stuff off before you put in your LCD, before you put in your new screen. Some people will wait to put the LCD in, until after, or not the LCD, the lens, the screen lens protector, the thing that we're putting on right now. Some people will just wait and put that on as the last thing. And yeah, that's probably the best. I don't know why I always do this, but I'll put the glass on first. But if you put your LCD on and then you wait to put the screen, the lens protector there, you could really make sure there's no dust or anything on the LCD before you kind of tighten everything up and get everything closed. So this step right here, it's not important to do this at this time. You could wait until everything is done just to make sure your LCD is cleaned up, no fingerprints, no dust, nothing like that. But there we go, putting it on. Why not? After we cleaned up all the previous residue, because if you leave it on there, it may not sit evenly. And I've seen a few people do that, put them on there and there's still like gunk underneath and one side sits up a little higher. You don't want that, man. I'm no pro, like I keep saying, because I know people are gonna be like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? You suck at soldering. I know, bro. But like I said, this isn't a tutorial. This is just documentation of my efforts in doing this pretty easy mod, being a noob and being able to successfully do it. So boom, there we go. We're dropping in the McWill LCD. See, at this point, if you did put the lens cover on and then you put your LCD in, as long as everything's clean, you should be good. But some dust, something could creep in there. So yeah, you might want to put that LCD on last. And here, I'm just kind of press fitting it in there. It'll kind of, if you cut everything properly on that left side, it'll sit in there tight, fairly tight, not like where it's going to break anything. But I just wanted to make sure it fit so I didn't have to trim anything else. And now we do have to get that last piece on the oscillator done to the side of the screen. And then we could pop everything in. And this cable, this is the one where it's that I rerouted up and over the main board instead of the side, as you're gonna see in a second. But boom, just get it on that oscillator. Struggle a little bit, you know what I'm saying? One day I'll be all right. But I mean, that's all you're doing is 4 solder connections and a little tiny case modification to get the screen in there. Really, once you got this down, it shouldn't take you like no more than 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops to get everything done. I've done a handful of them now. I've actually done another one after recording this, and I'm getting better at it. These screens, you know, these kits, they're like 75 bucks on console 5, and I'm glad I haven't broke any of them yet, because I did buy a few of them to do these mods. But there we go. We got that connection on there, ready to drop everything in. Before, you know, I didn't test it before I closed everything, but everything, you know, worked fine. But you may want to, once you get everything going, even before you pop the LCD into that part of the shell, you could just lay everything into the other half and get those battery connections back in there, get your batteries installed, and then turn it on and see if it works. Like I said on the other video, if you use an EverDrive, it may not turn on the first time. And somebody had mentioned in my previous video that they're using like electronics, like batteries for cameras or something like that. I'll have to look into that. And they said that they never have that issue using an EverDrive. I'm using those Eneloop batteries, and it does happen to me if I let the Game Boy sit and then I turn it on. I may have to cycle the power switch, you know, turn it on and off and then back on for it to work with the EverDrive. It's just a power issue. It's not anything wrong with the EverDrive, not anything wrong with the LCD kit. It's just, you know, that LCD requires more power, and then also the Game Boy EverDrive requires a little more power. So it's, the Game Boy's just like, what's going on, bro? This isn't natural. But here we go. We're just putting the buttons back in. Don't be a doofus and tighten everything back up and not have your buttons in there. You know, I've almost done that a couple times, guys. Almost done that a couple times. And the power switch, don't forget that. And your little infrared cover. Make sure you get that lined up in there. These things, they will only go in one way on this part of the shell. So don't trip, don't worry about it. And as you see that cable going from the LCD, I have it coming out from the side. And it works just fine, but I found routing it up and over the board, the top right, or top left, my bad. The top left, it just fits a little nicer. And then the cables actually can lay in a little nicer, as I do put some Kapton tape here to kind of make sure the oscillator's not touching anything on the board. I do that in a moment here, but I kind of changed it up a little bit like the next day after I recorded this. But it's a learning experience. You get better at it, you find better ways to do things. And hey, I'm just happy that I have a Game Boy Color with an LCD screen, my dudes. So here we go. Now we're getting that ribbon cable in there. Everything's ready to roll. So we got the ribbon cable tightened up. Couple times recording this, my freaking camera battery died, man. I got to get some new batteries for that thing. So like right here, I had to restart recording, and toward the end as well. But all the buttons feel good. Just make sure, that's the one thing, before you put everything together, if you at least have this half done, make sure the buttons aren't crunchy. Make sure they're lined up. Make sure there's no wires or anything blocking the conductive pads for the batteries. Or the buttons anyway. That's one of the big things to pay attention to. And then here we go, just getting a little of that Kapton tape up on there to make sure we're not getting any shorts from that oscillator possibly touching anything. The one thing I do want to point out is, you know, that black piece right in the middle of the board, that is the cartridge slot. And you may be looking at this with the cables laying out and the oscillator, and you're gonna be like, this is gonna block the cartridge slot. It's not. Don't worry about that. That was the one thing I was like kind of concerned with on the first one. I was like, am I gonna block the cartridge slot? You're not, because the other half of the shell has that metal cage for the cartridge slot, and it pushes everything up against the board. So that's one thing. With that being bare metal, you know, you kind of want to have the Kapton tape at least covering anything that's exposed on that oscillator, just to make sure you're not shorting anything or blowing anything up. It would sure be pretty shitty if you know, you got your beautiful new Game Boy Color with your McWill LCD screen, the thing blew up in your hands because something got shorted. I mean, I highly doubt this thing would blow up, but you know what I'm saying. You don't want to damage anything. You want everything to be nice and beautiful. Okay, well now we're ready to screw in the board to this half of the shell. It's only those 3 screws, pretty easy to do. Just if you have a snag or it's like too tight to screw it down all the way, I mean, don't over tighten it. But if it won't go in, you got a problem. So take the board out and double check. And then don't forget as well, get that power slider back in there. Very easy to put in. It just pops in there. Just line it up with the actual switch. Then make sure you're in the off position, just in case when you put those batteries in there. And everything is looking pretty good. Got that Kapton tape covering a few spots here, ready to go. The one thing I do want to point out is, I know I talked about in the previous video, was putting the electrical tape on the left and right side of the screen to mask that bare metal. Cliff Repair Corner, he had mentioned on Twitter to use vinyl instead, and that is definitely what you want to do. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just trying to find a quick solution. But if you use electrical tape over time, it'll gunk up, slide around. And I've had that happen to me. I just wasn't thinking about it for some reason. So definitely vinyl would be the best. But also, from what I understand, the Jelly Belly Customs glass screens, the Game Boy Color Light ones, work great for this. So here we go. Just checking this out real quick. We got the screen going, everything working. Always got to test out a little bit of Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I think it really shows the screen shining. You know, the colors don't do justice on my recording. In person, holy crap. Everything looks amazeballs, in my opinion. This is a great little kit, great modification for the Game Boy Color. You got the whole library of original Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games in that form factor that you like without having to buy a GB Boy Color, which I do have those and we've highlighted them before. They are pretty badass for the price, but that aspect ratio is wrong. And there's a few other little quirks on those things, but those are okay devices if you don't care about original hardware. We have one, my son uses it all the time, but boom, I'm really digging this. So really appreciate you guys hanging out with me during this long, almost 20-minute video doing this install. But hey, I'm getting better, doing more of these. Just wanted to share this with you guys. So there you go. Really do appreciate it. Super Mario Deluxe, man, on the Game Boy Color. I never really could get into this game. It just doesn't feel right for some reason. I don't know if you could relate, let me know, but this game, it never felt right to me. I don't know why. But there you go, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye. And McWill LCD mod that biatch. Boom. Bye.